There's something about Downton Abbey that makes me want to eat sponge cake and drink tea. Now, when I was a little girl, my family used to go to my Granny McIntosh's for Sunday dinner. And quite often, a sponge cake was the treat after having eaten all your vegetables. So today I thought I would share with you my favorite sponge cake recipe. It's very simple. From beginning to end, it takes about an hour and it's on the table. So I've put on my best Mrs. Patmore apron, closest thing that I have to it. No corset though. I've put on my one piece of hair jewelry, a little reminder, a little nod to the 20s and the glamour of Downton Abbey. So let's get all the ingredients ready and let's get baking. Step number 1, turn on your oven and preheat to 350 degrees. Step 2, you need to gather all your ingredients, mise en place it's called, everything in its place. You need 2 cups of flour, and I prefer cake and pastry flour when making a cake. Gives you a much crumblier, tender cake. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and you can just add that right into your flour. Give it a stir with a fork or a whisk. That's all you need to do. 4 eggs, 1 cup of milk, 4 tablespoons of butter, which is the equivalent of 1/4 cup, some parchment paper for lining your cake pans, just so that cake comes out in one whole piece, and 2 round cake pans. The last piece of mise en place, putting everything in its place, ready to go, is getting your cake pans ready. And just measure your parchment paper against your cake pan to make sure it is wide enough. Then cut your piece, fold it in half, fold it in quarters, and now use this inside corner, this corner right here, and start to diagonally fold in half again. Crease it and fold it in half one more time, edge to edge. Now get your cake pan. Place the very tip of your folded parchment paper into the center of your pan. Just eyeball it. Doesn't have to be exact. Remember, the purpose of this parchment paper is just to make removing the cake from the pan a little bit easier. Now take your scissors and cut off the piece of parchment that overlaps the outside of the tin. And just throw that aside. In our house, we put it in the fire. Downton Abbey, you'd have to give it to Daisy. When you unfold this, now you have a circle that fits in the bottom of your pan. Reach for your butter and just use a piece of the wrapper. Just rub it on the block of butter and then rub it into the base of the pan. And really try and get into the corner. Now I'm going to take that little bit of flour that I had reserved, place it just on the edge of the pan. Now I'm just going to roll the pan so that the flour sticks on the edge only until you've gone all the way around. Any little lumps that end up in the corners doesn't matter. Be grateful they're there. That will help your cake not to stick. Any little bit of flour that's left over, just discard it. It's maybe a teaspoon of flour. It's not a big deal. Now reach for your circle of parchment. Place it in the bottom of the pan. Turn on a burner and set it to medium-high heat. Add your 1 cup of milk and your 4 tablespoons of butter. Now it's better to use 2% milk or whole milk, 3% milk for this recipe. It'll give you a more authentic flavor. Now keep an eye on this, try not to walk away from it. You can see here the butter has almost melted. So I'm going to turn the heat off now because there's enough heat in the milk that the milk will continue to melt the butter on its own. is after about a minute of whisking. It's frothy, but not fluffy. We've got about 3 more minutes to go. Personally, I wouldn't want to do this by hand even if I could. Let's bring back the electric mixer and let's really get the job done. Now this recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar. I like to add 1 3/4 cups. I prefer a less sweet sponge cake. And when you're adding that delicious strawberry jam for the center and dusting with icing sugar, I find that the cake itself doesn't need to be quite so sweet. Restart the mixer, bringing it to a medium-high speed, and just gradually drizzle the sugar in. Gradually drizzling in the sugar helps the sugar to dissolve, which will give you a much smoother, fluffier cake. So we're not quite done the beating for the sugar, but I thought I'd pause for a moment, scrape down the bowl, just to make sure there's no extra sugar hiding in the corners of the bowl or down at the bottom, and then restart the mixer. So you can see the texture of the eggs has changed once we've added the sugar. There are fewer air holes, air bubbles, and it has kind of a silky, ribbony meringue texture. This is exactly what you're looking for. Now let's combine the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients. Flour and baking powder all at once, added to the eggs and sugar. Now restart your mixer slowly so that the flour and baking powder don't go everywhere. I'm going to blend this just for 30 seconds or so, only until the flour is incorporated into the egg and sugar mixture. And that's it. Now it's time to add the milk. You can see the butter is kind of floating on top of the milk. That's nothing to worry about because once it all goes into the batter, it will all come together. Pour it in. Once again, start out nice and slow. Increase the speed once you see it's a little less liquid. And that's it. We're ready to put the batter into the pans. Now just pour your batter into your greased, floured, and parchmented cake pans, and just try to divide the batter evenly between both pans. Get all the batter out of the bowl. And then you're ready to place these into a 350-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes. I'll show you how to know when they're done. It's been 25 minutes. They smell heavenly. Now, how do you know when they're ready? Well, they're this beautiful golden color. When I press my finger onto the cake, it doesn't leave an indentation. Also, just for one last check, you can use a toothpick or a nice sharp paring knife. If it comes out clean, no batter sticking to the blade or to the toothpick, your cake is ready. So here we have the beautiful brown, golden colored sponge cake. It's been cooling on these wire racks for about 10 to 15 minutes, so it's time now to take it out of the pan. Just take a regular butter knife, run it around the edge of the pan, then place your cooling rack upside down over the top of your cake pan and flip. Give it a little shake, and there's the cake. Now just slowly peel the parchment away from the cake and let it cool for 10 to 15 more minutes, and then we're ready for the finishing touches. We're ready for the final step, decorating the cake and ready to serve. First, you need just a regular plate, not your fancy plate that you're going to use for presentation. So a regular plate and another piece of parchment, just to help you bring the cake away from the plate when it's finished. Take one layer of your cake, Place the round side down onto the plate. Reach for your favorite strawberry jam. If you happen to have homemade preserves, that's even better. But traditionally, Victorian sponge tea cake is made with either strawberry or raspberry jam. Spoon the jam onto the cake. And I like to just use the back of the spoon to spread it out. Not too thick of a layer. And when you see those whole strawberries, oh, you think, how lucky is that person going to be to get that piece? Spread right to the edge. Altogether, I'd say it's about a half a cup of jam, probably a little bit less. Now reach for your top layer of cake. Flip the top layer of cake the right way around. So the round top part is the top of your 2 layers of cake, and the 2 flat edges, the 2 bottoms, come together. And just give it an encouraging little twist to make sure it's well stuck. A little bit of icing sugar, perhaps a tablespoon. It's very easy to tell icing sugar from salt. No mix-ups happening this time. And just give it a little shake, just dusting the top of your cake with your icing sugar. Now we're going to present the cake onto a lovely platter. Now this is the trickiest part. I'm going to lift the cake off the plate, one hand underneath, the other hand I'm slowly going to peel the parchment back and slip the cake onto my platter. Look at that. Beautiful cake. It is going to be delicious. Doesn't that look good? Oh my goodness, I can't wait. After all, it's 3:30, the perfect time for tea. It's even still a little bit warm. It's light, it's fluffy, and it tastes just how I remember. There are some things that I'm glad we no longer have. Corsets, outdoor bathrooms, having to heat the hot water for your bath with a kettle, having one electrical outlet in the entire household. Sometimes it's just that 5 minutes in the afternoon that can make your whole day. And for me, there's nothing like a good cup of tea.